You won't believe this, but it's the truth. Dizzy Gillespie used to say, when we go to hotels, say sex, he said yes. We are talking about luck. I'm lucky. Even today, I'm thinking about those times. I say, wow, what happened? Why I'm here? There's an Argentinian poet who said, chance and destiny are synonymous. My destiny was this, and I was lucky. Dizzy Gillespie, he brought me to the United States. I'm a legal alien. I'm not illegal. I came with all the things. Dizzy Gillespie, he brought me to the United States. So I'm starting with this band and things were going fantastic. Tours to Brazil even, Peru. All of a sudden, the State Department, American State Department, was sending jazz bands all over the world as PR for the United States because that was during the Cold War. And they wanted to attract young people to America instead to Russia. That was how lucky I am because I had no idea. They were sending bands, including Duke Ellington, Count Basie, and it was Dizzy Gillespie with a big band, and arrived to Buenos Aires in September. I couldn't believe it because I stopped everything I was doing. I canceled all the contracts I had with the band, and not only that, my musicians, they were not going to play anyway with me because they wanted to go to those, and we bought tickets. And we went to his band played during 1 week. One of the guys who I knew, an Argentinian guy, very wealthy, said, we have to show Dizzy how is the jazz in Argentina. I said, well, yeah, why not? I asked my musicians, because there was a union, and who's going to pay them? I asked my musicians, would you like to play for Dizzy without pay? Yeah, no problem. So we played. They organized a kind of luncheon, not only for him, but for the whole band and his wife. One of his musicians was Quincy Jones, and he was there too. I mean, everyone, great musicians. When we finished playing, they all were applauding, but he wasn't in the table. Why? Because he was coming to the stage and says, who wrote these charts? I did. Would you like to come to the United States? And I came. He brought me to the United States. because he became my sponsor. You know, you have to go to the American embassy and do all the... And he was the sponsor. He found somebody else, and they signed, they came to the embassy, and they did it. And then, when I came here, I started with him. And he was an amazing teacher. I learned more with him than I learned with all my other professors. He taught me things that are amazing. And also, he knew a lot of music. People say, well, he's a jazz musician with a lot of notes. Oh, every note belongs to a chord. Now, his chords are very extended. And I learned a lot the root of those chords, which is more than I learned in the Paris Conservatory. People, American people, they don't understand the depth of his music. And in general, the music of Charlie Parker and Duke Ellington, they think it's something. But it was a fantastic experience. It's still with me because when I write scores like Bullet, dun, 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 they're just influences there. Dun, dun, dun. They're just influences there. The first thing I wrote for him, because I always had the combination of classical music and jazz. It was a suite dedicated to him, called Gillespiana, like the Bachianas, Brasileiras, the Villalobos, Gillespiana. He was very successful, sold a lot of records, and everybody started. So we started to play all over the world, tours. In one of those tours, there was a guy who was the manager of many people with name. We were going to the airport, and this guy, whose name was Clarence Avant, he was the manager among many people. He was the manager of Jimmy Smith, the organ player. He was going also in the tour. So we were in the same airplane in the airport, New York, and this guy came to say, said, "Did you write the Gillespiana suite?" "Yeah." "When you come back, this is my car, call me." I didn't know him. I didn't know what he wanted. So I go to the tour, and when I come back, I call him. He invited me for lunch. And he says, "Are you happy with this?" "Of course." "Are you going to be always with this?" "What do you mean?" "Well, you know, there's more than jazz. You can do something else." "Is anything else that would you like to do besides jazz?" I said, "Well, I would like to write music for movies." "Oh, that's easy." He was a friend of the head of the music publishing department of MGM. And he got me the first movie like that. And then after that, that's why I do movies. You see how what it's all related. And everything, you see how. I moved away from movie. Toward the end, and maybe that's one of the reasons, was the 10 tracks. I told directors, stop going to record stores. Let me do it. And they didn't like it because they felt insecure. I think the use of 10 tracks is they feel insecure. They don't trust the composer. And they feel much better with using something they know and that it works. They try and it works. That's silly because it goes against the idea of art. This is an art that combines music, camera work, photography, theater, sound effects. The sound effect guy, they're fantastic. And sometimes we, the composers, work with it, and we combine what the soundtrack is going to be. Because sounds are also music. For instance, in Bullet, there's a big car chase. And the director, he thought that the whole chase had to have music also. I said, no way, because you use the sound effects. Let me put it this way. There's a moment in which Bullet, he comes out of the hospital, I don't remember, and they start following him. And then in a moment, he notices that they're following him, and he does, boom! He puts the gear and start. That's when the chase starts. So I said, why don't I start very suspenseful, a kind of rhythm, a pulse, and very suspenseful and tension. Very suspenseful and tension, going up and mounting. Going up and mounting, and when he does like that, out. And then you start sound effects. And that's the way it came out.
For instance, since the television set might be in the living room and somebody in the house is in the kitchen, they have to know that that program is starting and it's, oh, Mannix is now. So. Or, for instance, Mission Impossible. It's like the difference. It would be like in music for movies is like writing a letter, and music for television is writing a telegram. You have to give very concise message. So.
Impossible. This mission is impossible. It's impossible. Capitan, give it up. Forget it. Welcome back.
Please say hello to Dr. Dre. You, I know, listen to a lot of music. You're looking for inspiration. You're going through old records. Like, do you go to yard sales? Where do you get all your records?
I used to.
You did?
I used to. I used to go to pawn shops and what have you to find different sounds from music. I collect records. I've been collecting albums. Like international records, like Lalo Schifrin. And
yeah.
This just happened to be a song that was in one of my crates, you know, and it worked out.
You know, we're talking about a profession in which you cannot avoid the human factor. The director and the producer and everybody else, there's a music editor. You work with, as a composer, I don't work with the whole, you know, cinematography. I'm not at the beginning of the process. I don't read the script. I'm not approving or disapproving the script. I'm not talking to the actors. I'm not any the actor you could have, because this is before. The composer comes at the end. composer comes at the end. At that moment, you have to take the movie as it is. Cannot change it, the movie. Now, you can have a director who is very enthusiastic. They're all enthusiastic at the beginning. Oh, we want Lalo, we want. But there's one director, for instance, he was very, yeah, that's right. But then all of a sudden started to change and change and change because he felt that my music was stronger than what he done. And he was a very good director. Very, very good, excellent director. And we had an argument, and I said, look, I don't want to have problems. You take the movie and get another composer. When that happens, the whole industry, because they find out everything, the whole industry thinks that we are litigious. And there's no cases of composers, maybe one who I knew who was litigious, very litigious. But he didn't care because he had money. He had inherited money from his parents. It was a different case. And he was a very good composer, but a little bit crazy. And I liked him. The producer and especially the director is the one who has the last word, and you have to do what he wants. There's several possibilities. One is you realize all of a sudden that he's right. Then you do exactly what. Another possibility is that you tell them your ideas, and you, like in the case of Bullet, like, it's a small detail, but happens with the whole thing. You can convince him that what you're saying is, and he admits it, and he does it the way. Or there's a third possibility, which is to make kind of concessions both parts. In this, he wins, in this, I win. And it's a kind of political solution to this problem.
Six shots or only five? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But being this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off, you've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
After the introduction comes really the first part, which is my childhood. My father was the concertmaster, the first violin of the Philharmonic Orchestra of Buenos Aires. And he took me to all the rehearsals, and this was a big influence, of course. And not only my father, his family and my mother's family, they were all musicians. I didn't know anything about music. You have to understand that I didn't know absolutely anything. Then when I started to go to school and college, I started to study history. I knew that there were other people, geography. That was different. But at the beginning, I was only in music. And I didn't understand there was no other profession I knew, which is very important, probably. And I was living about 1.5 blocks from the Teatro Colón. I was living 1.5 blocks, but I had to cross a garden, in diagonal. There are many gardens, they call it plazas. The city is a lot of skyscrapers, but also the city breathes through these big plazas, gardens. So my father started to take me to operas and ballets and listen to symphonies. But one thing that impressed me was opera. Opera was the same kind of music, artistic entertainment that people had in the 19th century. It was the only kind of art in which you had a combination of literature, visual things, drama, theater, comedy. The movies they didn't exist yet. And I learned everything from that. And when I started to do music for movies, I applied the same principle. I mean, no principle, I don't have principle. But my instinct, I'm not rigid, but my instinct takes me to the same musical language. Audio music contrapoint. My mother was not a musician, but her brothers, she had 2 brothers that were musicians. And my father had 2 brothers. One was the first cello of the same orchestra. And another brother who played also violin. And then there was a sister who played flute. Also classical, all fantastic. She had her own chamber orchestra. When I was a child and I started to play piano, I liked to do improvisations. I didn't know what I was doing. I was doing it because I liked it. Improvisations in the style of Haydn or Mozart or Bach a lot. And it must have been very interesting because my parents, my father especially, says, "Oh, do that. Can you do that again?" Well, I cannot play the same thing, but I improvise something similar. And then they started to bring friends who were musicians from Teatro Colón or my uncle. They were all kind of, wow. They liked it, and they were proud of me. They were not encouraging me, they were proud of me. So, you see, there's this connection. I didn't know what I was doing, but then when I knew what I was doing, it was easy for me. My father, he was very well respected, and he always protected me, and he was very... One thing is that the only problem was that he thought that I was going to be a musician. So he was a little bit, when I was doing something different, like even playing soccer, which I loved, he didn't like that. There is a difference between being a music lover and a music professional. And I didn't have any idea that I was going to become professional. Even today, I'm thinking about those times. I said, wow, what happened? Why I'm here? What did I do all these things I'm doing? But that's what happened. I studied composition with Juan Carlos Paz, one of the greatest composers avant-garde. He studied in Vienna with Schoenberg. My teacher, Juan Carlos Paz, he was giving me lessons in cafes. Of course, he had his house with a studio, and I went there too. But how do you feel having a coffee because the lesson is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, after lunch? Yeah, and it was in the middle of downtown Buenos Aires, and friends, they stop and come and have a coffee in the middle of the lessons. But that was good, because he was a fantastic guy. And one day, without me knowing, he went to the French embassy because he had friends from Paris, well, from France, from all over Europe, actually, Vienna, or Stockholm, London. He went to the French embassy, found out that they were giving scholarships. He was not interested in my money paying him for the lessons. He was beyond that. He wanted me to make progress in what I was doing. So he went to and he said, one day he came to me, in one of the lessons, he says, you know, they are granting scholarships in the Paris Conservatory. Wow! But you have to win. You have to pass the test, otherwise they won't. So I said, but you think I can have a chance? I remember he said, you have nothing to lose. So I went to the French embassy. They asked me all the, my diet, when I was born, what sex I was, all the things that they ask you. Dizzy Gillespie used to say, when we go to hotels, say sex, he said yes. Anyway, they passed the test and I was admitted, so I had to go to Paris. That's why I went. And I stayed there 4 years. I took and I studied with great Olivier Messiaen. He was the director of the conservatory, and at the time he was one of my teachers. He also was the teacher of Pierre Boulez. This very old guy, but when he was young, he studied orchestration with Maurice Ravel.
So you have the source.
Everything, you see how, and I learned a lot with him. I learned a lot. As a matter of fact, in Mission Impossible, not the main team, the one that turn, the other team that's that's based on one of the scales that I learned from Messiaen. He called it most or limited transposition. It's too technical, but I use one of the most. I didn't start as a composer. I'm less as a conductor. I started as a pianist, and I used to play quite well. One aspect is very important to say here, extremely important, because without that, I wouldn't be here. Well, many things would happen that I wouldn't be here, but this is very important. I also, parallel to classical music, I started to play jazz, and I was blinded by jazz, not seduced, blinded. When I discovered modern American jazz, Americans don't realize that jazz is the classical music of the United States. I mean, you can have Gershwin, you can have Copland, but the real classical music here is jazz. From J. Roll Morton in New Orleans to, let's say, Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker, New York City, and John Coltrane late, and the free jazz, all this, the history, the swing era with Benny Goodman and Harry James and Duke Ellington, very important. Duke Ellington is maybe one of the greatest composers of American music. For me, there's really no difference between jazz and classical music. Classical music and jazz, they are both great music. When there's good music, it's good music. And the other, we don't talk about that. So, yeah, Louis Armstrong is one of the beginners of what they call jazz. He came to Buenos Aires and he played there, and I met him. And I told him how much I admire him, but of course, he had his own particular style. The way he was phrasing. Well, all the great musicians have, in jazz, I'm talking, in classical music, like Stravinsky said, they cannot interpret. You have to play what is written. Now, you have to play with feeling and give it life, but you cannot interpret. But in jazz, yes, because you are interpreting your own, when you're improvising, you're interpreting your own music that comes from here and here. And that is what Louis Armstrong was fantastic. And without him, there would have not been that kind of incredible. It was like Jerry Lord Morton and him. There was the foundation of a new kind of music. I kept playing. At the same time I was studying classical music, I was a pianist, and because I was a pianist, I started to learn from records things that were happening in jazz. And I started to play jazz in the piano. And I started to play quite well, because anywhere I was going, say, hey, Lalo, come. In Paris, there was a Club Saint-Germain, the greatest jazz musicians in France. They were very good. One of them was a disciple of Dizzy Gillespie. His name was André Collin. And he was a trumpet player, amazing. And wherever I was going, jazz, everybody, and the girls, they started to, hey, because I was playing, and I was single. So no problem. That was really a door. I tell you why. Of course, I love movies, and I pay attention what the composers were doing. And I say, well, this is fantastic. But I still was playing jazz. In France, I was going to movie theaters, anywhere I was going to movies, and started to pay a lot of attention to the music. But I kept playing and playing and playing. And I started to play quite well when I came back from Paris to Buenos Aires. I didn't know I was not a lawyer. What I'm going to do now? And I put together a big band, jazz. 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, 5 saxophones, 1 electric guitar, 1 bass, and I conducted from the piano. I play the piano. Well, it started to, it was not easy, but I found somebody to help me economically, and I did it. And I did for radio and television. I was not playing gigs yet, but the band started, my name started to get big, just naturally. Now, I didn't pay for PR or anything. And things started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm starting with this band, and things were going fantastic. Tours to Brazil, even Peru. All of a sudden, Dizzy Gillespie with a big band, and arrives to Buenos Aires in September. I couldn't believe it. One of the guys who I knew, an Argentinian guy, very wealthy, he said, we have to show Dizzy how the jazz in Argentina. They organized a kind of luncheon, not only for him, but for the whole band and his wife. One of his musicians was Quincy Jones, and he was there too. great musicians. When we finished playing, they all were applauding, but he wasn't in the table. Why? Because he was coming to the stage and says, "Who wrote these charts?" I did. "Would you like to come to the United States?" And I came. He brought me to the United States.
Shooby dooby oops, 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 shooby dooby oops, 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 shooby dooby oops, 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 shooby dooby oops, shooby dooby oops, shooby dooby oops, 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 shooby dooby oops.
Can I ask you what was Dizzy Gillespie like as a friend?
Fantastic. You see, there was a big day. He started what he called bebop, the new school of jazz. He was not revolutionary against swing, but it was an extension. And he started this together with, he had a partner, big partner, Charlie Parker. There was a big difference between the two. Dizzy was straight, I mean, big sense of humor, but he didn't take drugs. Maybe sometimes a cognac, but no drugs. While Charlie Parker died of drugs. He injected heroin in his blood. So Dizzy was not like that. And he wouldn't even, not only that, he wouldn't even allow, because there was a lot of drug dealers always after jazz musicians. And we were playing in places that were difficult. And he always protected me. And he was a drug dealer. "Hey, Lalo," because he was a drummer, I knew, stay away from him. And when Dizzy talks, forget it. But on the other hand, he had an incredible sense of humor. And he was a little bit naughty. He the only vice he had was girlfriends. He was married, but on the road, once in Chicago, I think, there was a girl that was with him all the, a lady, very nice, very good looking, and she was white. He was great looking and with all the, and he was a man with black robe. And, you know, I lived alone, that was his business. And one day, I go to the club a little earlier because I wanted to warm up. And I see her with another guy. So when he came, I said, "Who is that guy?" "Oh, my husband-in-law." Think about it. You have to think about it. My husband-in-law, because she was married to the other guy.
And now I would like to play one of the new things out of Cuba. This is a composition by our pianist, Lalo Schifrin, titled "Long, Long Summer." I actually didn't know him then, and someone introduced us down in Argentina, and we hung out a little bit together, and he came to all the concerts, and then he came to America, and by that time, I was getting ready to fire my piano player, so Lalo brought Gillespieana, the arrangement, and so there was no piano playing with the arrangement, and he played. And I said, well, what are you doing? He said, nothing. I said, well, you want a job? He said, yes. He joined the band then. So he stayed with me for some time, a couple of years. Lalo had a good conception of what I had done before. So he knew all the music from the records. So there was no problem for him when he joined the band. There was no problem for him to play because he knew all the music.
I had many teachers, but one master. And I think with Dizzy I learned more than with anybody. Because with Dizzy I learned what music is about.
My favorite Dizzy Gillespie song would have to be Manteca.
Oh.
I love Manteca.
My grandson, they 1-2 years old, he likes Manteca also. Yes.
I can picture that, yeah. My son likes it too, actually, yeah, I play it for him.
Same here, my son likes it.
Dun, 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 dun.
And the syncopation, just the...
Yeah. So, as I said, when I was a child, I didn't know anything. Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Mendelssohn, Brahms, Wagner, Debussy, Ravel, yes. When I discovered Stravinsky, I couldn't believe it. Because the Rite of Spring is the closest thing to jazz. I mean, there's some similarities or correspondence. Also, for instance, Picasso, Stravinsky, Dizzy Gillespie, they correspond each other. And Picasso is a painter. Pum, 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 pum. I made an analysis of that. It's fantastic because the rhythms are retrograde. It's like a counterpoint. For instance, if there's all 8 notes, pam, 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 and then there's an accent, pam, 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 and then later on it's backwards. It's pam, 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 pam. It's all very well. I met Stravinsky. Because he escaped from Russia because of the Stalin and the communism. Then he went to Switzerland and then Paris. That's where Rite of Spring was a world premiere. The Théâtre des Champs-Élysées. I played myself later on when I was living in Paris. What happened is that he was tired of Europe. He didn't want to go to New York. Music happened in Carnegie Hall, and he wanted to come to Los Angeles, the furthest American place further from Europe. He didn't want to be in Europe. If they wanted to visit him, yes, but he had a house not far from here. The County Museum of Art, Los Angeles. They had a place, no recitals, no concerts. It was not a concert hall, but it was small. They had a stage, and it was very nice, and a good acoustic. What happened was that when the Rite of Spring was performed in Paris, yes, but the ballet, it was a ballet, it was for dance. The dancers, they needed to practice and rehearse, and they couldn't do it. An orchestra was too expensive. So Stravinsky himself wrote a production for 2 pianos, because it's impossible one piano to play all that. And that exists now. I mean, they couldn't find it, but they finally, when he was in Los Angeles already, finally they found the scores in the library of the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées. So they said, let's do it. And he didn't want to go to Paris, we do it in Los Angeles. So when I read that this was going to be played at the museum, I went. I couldn't buy tickets. I had a connection because they knew me. There was almost no audience. It was just to listen to it. There are 2 pianists that used to play for me in the studios, Michael Tisser Thomas and Ralph Gleason. They play fantastic. They read well, they great technique, and fantastic pianists. Michael Tisser also became the conductor of the San Francisco Orchestra. So when he finished, I said to the guy who was next to me, "This is fantastic. This is amazing." And what do you think? He said, "Well, I think I don't take it in the pornographic way. This is you will understand the connection." I said, "This is like you see all the time, a woman very well dressed with a lot of jewelry and very well put together and incredible dress and first class, and all of a sudden you see a nude, and she's still beautiful." So he understood what I was saying, that we do two pianos, it's nude, no orchestration, which is incredible. And he says to me, "Oh, tell this to Igor." What? Stravinsky was sitting in the back. I was in the front. And there was almost nobody in between. It was almost empty, the place. And he texts me to tell Igor. So Stravinsky said, "Oh, I like that. Tell this to Vera." Vera was his wife, Vera Stravinsky. I could tell the same thing twice. So then, unfortunately, he died not too long after. He was very old. But in good shape. I mean, in good shape mentally. I mean, I knew the history of what happened, the rise of Hitler and all the things, and he was winning the war and finally he lost. It's an incredible story about madness. He was absolutely crazy, totally crazy. Hitler was voted into office. Means there was a mass psychology that people they were afraid of freedom. When people are afraid of freedom, watch it. Because that means there's a mass psychology. They call it the emotional plague. Emotional plague. It's a plague that all of a sudden goes all. I've seen it. You see it now in Venezuela with Maduro. Why they are going so crazy? When he's, on the other hand, wait. There's a reason for that.
I see it in America now too. A little.
No, I'm not talking about America because I don't talk politics. But when I wrote the music of the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, I had all this inside me and I put it in the music.
And what was the reception to it? How did people?
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Has that ever? I don't know. How important is really the reception from the audience? Does it really make a difference, or?
Oh yeah, it makes a difference. Yeah. I don't like rejection, but on the other hand, I think everybody's free to think. Well, if they don't like anything I do, I respect that. I used to play. Wow. Once, it was in Vienna. We played Just Make the Symphony. And before there was a press conference, and a lady who was writing for a classical magazine asked me, "Why did you write music on Mission Impossible in 5/4?" Oh, I said, "I wrote it for people who have high legs." And she wrote it. Him in the magazine that she was writing. It was very important. It was all classical, very serious man. Said Lalo Schifrin wrote Mission Impossible for People Who Have Legs. And my agent said he was German, he still is German, but he didn't come to the concert. There was and when this came out, I said, what are you trying to do to me?
I think I read somewhere that you said that composing can be such a lonely business compared to performing. And
it is.
Yeah. And
because I am alone here, and I don't want anybody here. I am alone, yes, but I don't want anybody. I need concentration. Then, see the difference between composing and performing. It's performing, yes, you have the audience, and it's a communication and instantaneous. But when you are composing, you need complete loneliness, and that is important. The same teacher, Juan Carlos Paz, said, when you compose away from the piano. Have everything here.
when you compose, does it come to you constantly as you walk through life, or do you like to sit down and work? You know?
That's my problem. Insomnia.
Yeah.
I always had insomnia. It's difficult for me to go to sleep because music always, it comes from I don't know where. I would say 99% of the time it's mine. I always ask, I used to hire a guy who had a kind of musical dictionary, no words, no letters, a combination of sounds, but written. And I hired him and I paid him to find out if this kind of music is mine or somebody else. And when he told me, you go ahead, nobody wrote it. So then I went, yeah. He was working for Universal Studios also, doing the same thing. For not only for me, he was doing for the studio to make sure that neither one of their composers, like John Williams, Jerry Goldsmith, Bernard Herrmann, they were in the studio, and he was doing, but they were not paying him. The studio was paying to avoid lawsuits, plagiarism.
There's a reason, going all the way back to the days of silent films, that there was a pianist in the theater, for it is the musical score that can truly bring a cinematic score to life, adding incredible power to the words we hear and the visuals we see. And when the score is in the hands of an artistic master like Lalo Schifrin, a good film. A good film can become great, and a great film can be transformed into an all-time classic. It's been said of Lalo that his work cannot be easily labeled. I mean, is what he creates jazz? Is it classical, contemporary, popular? The answer is yes. It is all of those things, in whole or in part, for each film. And that's because he adapts his style to what filmmakers need. In doing so, Lalo has called himself a chameleon, and I agree in the most complimentary sense of what that means. For he is ever-changing, not hoping that the story fits his musical style, but being able, as so few can, to make his musical score perfectly match to the film, and thus the story gets told. Try to imagine Dirty Harry without the music that accompanies Harry's key moments. His throwing his badge into the river, or the moment they find the girl. To me, the music is heartbreaking. It conveys Harry's pain, and yet it manages, like Clint himself, to be cool. Cool. That's a pretty good word to describe a composer whose music helped define the music of the 60s. From the Cincinnati Kid, to Bullet, to Cool Hand Luke, and all the way through to the films of the past few years. and today including one of mine, The Bridge of San Luis Rey. His haunting score honors Thornton Wilder's tribute to love. And I'm so pleased to be here to thank you in person, Mr. Schifrin. Let's be honest. Without the cool Mission Impossible theme, I'm betting Tom Cruise fails in his mission the first time. Which means no next 5 sequels. Lalo is so many things: a true Renaissance man, a performer at the piano, a painter with notes, a conductor and composer who has scored some of the most memorable films of the past half century.
And I was thinking, one thing we share in common, both of us, is we're both jazz nuts. And he grew up in Argentina, and in Argentina they weren't allowed to, according to the story you told me some years ago. I'm assuming it's still accurate. That was that you had to kind of pirate the records and to listen to them.
No, what happened is they didn't allow at that time to sell records that they were they considered immoral. And they thought that jazz was immoral. That was the problem.
They did. Well, it is kind of immoral.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
But it's America's true own music,
Jazz is the American classical music.
It is. Absolutely. It's one of the true, solidly American art forms.
Absolutely.
And you're great in it. And I remember last time we were on the Cannes Film Festival thing before, and we were both playing the piano, and you were playing well. I was kind of playing chopsticks or something like that. But anyway, it was great fun, and Don Siegel loved you, and I love you.
Yeah, I love him. I wish he was here. He was one of the greatest directors.
Yeah, he was.
But you learn a lot from him, so he had a great disciple.
But anyway, I just wanted that story, see if that was true, where that you actually bought the records or bought them on the market, on the sly.
No, that law was suppressed right away after 2 or 4 months, I think. But music is a universal language that does not need subtitles.
Absolutely. It is. It's great. And you got this guy right here. You got to take him home. What do you think?
Maybe. If you help it.
I'll carry it. But
you can.
I might put it in the back of the car or something.
Yeah. Well, it's very nice talking to you.
Yeah. I want to tell everybody that Clint not only is a great actor, but a great director. He directed one of the movies I scored for. Yeah.
And I like the way he spotted, and we start here, and we stop here. That was very good. And it was very, very inspiring.
Yeah, just, I still do that. A little here, a little there, and then pretty soon one day it falls together.
Yeah.
And you're lucky if it falls together, and then if you have to call Spielberg and have them redo it.
Oh, we can do a trio with Spielberg. You, Spielberg, and me.
Okay. Well, now that you got this guy, you can just go around and show people.
Yeah.
Put it on the front of your car like a Pontiac.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was, well.
Anyway, it's my honor to present Lalo Schifrin with this Oscar.
I'm very honored by this distinction that touches me profoundly. My love and appreciation for motion pictures started very early in my life. I remember when I was 5 years old, my parents took me to see a movie, a horror movie. And at that moment, I realized that without music, they wouldn't be so scary. And it's true. I have been fortunate to have the opportunity to work with great, outstanding directors, producers, and talented musicians in the creation of musical scores to support their projects. So, you have any questions? No. Going to keep going. No, I like to thank my father, my mother, my teachers, my friends, my family, and especially my wife. Composing for movies has given me a lifetime of joy and creativity. Receiving this honorary Oscar is a culmination of a dream. It is a mission accomplished. Again, my warmest gratitude to all of you for this honor, and my personal thanks to Clint and Kathy for their part in this celebration. Aplausos. Oh. No, muchas gracias, amigos. Sometimes, I've never been involved in a religious discipline. I didn't. My family, they're Catholics and Jews. And maybe this is what happened. One grandmother would take me on Saturday to the synagogue. And the next day in the morning, the other grandmother would take me to the church, to Mass. And I was seeing all these people believing in the same God and doing this similar ceremonies, one in Latin, one in Hebrew. But I was thinking, why? And I started to think myself, God cannot be so difficult that he needs the adoration of this kind of, they really believe in God. And I started to say, yeah, I believe it. And then you're going to think I'm mystical. I'm not. I'm like everybody else. But I started to think, when you ask me this, I'm not really writing. I'm not really creating. I'm taking dictation. I don't know from whom. It could be God. But I'm taking dictation because I start hearing at night. That's why there's coming these melodies and these things, and I had to put it. How does it happen? From who's dictating?
Right.
And it could be who with capital W.
Right.
I don't know. So that's what I have to tell.